I moved into the Trehan boarding house on Front Street in Morgan City the same week I turned 29. And the woman who owned it handed me 6 rules before she handed me a lease. Odile Trahan was somewhere past 80, thin as a fishing pole, with hands that never stopped moving even when the rest of her sat still. Every morning at 7 she wound the kitchen clock, though I checked it twice against my phone, and it never once lost a minute. She answered questions about the house the way some people answer questions about money. Sideways. With a story about somebody's cousin instead of an actual fact. I asked her once why the 3rd floor stayed locked, and she told me about a nephew who moved to Houston in 1962. That was the whole answer. I let it be the whole answer, because that is what you do with landladies who have kind eyes and a firm grip on a stack of keys. I am a sound archivist, not a ghost hunter, not a psychic, a sound archivist, which means I get paid by a maritime museum 2 blocks from the water to restore reels and wax cylinders and cassette tapes that smell like attic dust, not the glamorous end of history. Not the part anyone puts in a brochure, just old machines and older silence, and Odile Trahan's house was full of a particular kind of silence I recognized immediately. The kind you get in a room where something used to make noise and doesn't any. She waited until I'd carried the last box up the stairs before she mentioned rules. She stood in my doorway with a folded paper and said, "You'll want to read this before your first night," and left before I could ask a single question. I didn't unfold it right away. I unpacked. I made the bed. I found the old Zenith radio cabinet pushed against the far wall, cracked dial, speaker grill gone brown with age, and out of habit, the kind you get from 10 years of fixing dead machines for a living, I ran my hand along the seam of its door. It wasn't locked. It also wasn't empty. Behind the grill, taped flat to the wood, was a second sheet, older than the one in my hand, typed, not written, no date, no name at the top, just a heading in faded blue ink that read for the new one, and under it 6 numbered lines. Rule 1. If the radio hums on its own after 10 o'clock, do not hum back. I read that standing in the dark, with the cabinet door still open, and I did not yet know I'd already broken it 3 nights running without noticing. The house had been a boarding room for shrimp boat crews once, back when Front Street smelled like diesel and drying nets instead of tourist coffee. Odile's late husband's family had run it since the 1940s. That much I got off a plaque, bolted to the porch post. In daylight the building looked ordinary, cracked plaster, salt-warped windows, a floor that sloped half an inch toward the bayou side. I told myself the hum was a dying capacitor finding its voice one last time before the cabinet went to the dump. I told myself a lot of things that first week. The crack came on the 4th night, when I woke at 2 in the morning to find my throat sore and my mouth dry, and my own voice still humming along with something. And the radio dial had turned 3 clicks to the right on its own. The landlady's folded sheet matched the older one behind the grill, mostly, except hers had a line the taped one didn't. Rule 4. Don't let the porch light go dark between one low tide and the next. I didn't understand that until my 3rd week, when a breaker tripped during a thunderstorm and every light in the house went out except the porch bulb, which stayed on steady, though nothing was feeding it current. I stood in the hallway and watched a bulb glow with no wire behind it doing any work, and understood these were not superstitions. They were instructions written by somebody who had already paid for the knowledge the hard way. Rule 2 came before that, chronologically, though I'm telling it out of order because that's how it landed on me. If you hear the foghorn sound 3 times close together and no boat is out on the water, do not go to the window. I broke that one on my 12th night, half asleep, and 3 low notes pulled me out of bed before I decided to move. I made it as far as the curtain, past the porch rail, past the dead grass, out where the marsh starts. A shape stood in water that should have come up past its knees. It didn't sink. It didn't sway with the current the way a person waiting would. It only turned, slow, like it had been waiting for me to look. That was the last rule I broke on purpose. I have tried to explain what came next to exactly one person, and I'm not sure I got it right even then. Rule 3 concerned the water stain on the parlor ceiling, shaped rough like a hand pressed flat against wet plaster. Damage from some storm nobody living remembered by name. Don't paint over it. Don't patch it. I asked Odile why once, and she told me about a roofer from Franklin who fell off a ladder in 1988, which had nothing to do with the question, which by then I understood was exactly the point of every answer she gave. That was the last normal thing I let myself believe about this house. Rule 5 was the mirror in the hall bathroom. Cover it during any named storm, hers said, and I did, taping a bedsheet over the glass every time the weather service put a name on something spinning in the Gulf, telling myself I was protecting the mirror rather than protecting myself from whatever came through when the pressure dropped low enough. During Tropical Storm Dell, the corner of the sheet slipped, and I didn't notice until I was already brushing my teeth. For 4 seconds, behind my own shoulder in that reflection, I saw a second shape standing where my closet door should have been. It wasn't wearing anything I recognized as clothes. It wasn't shaped the way a person is supposed to be shaped. I have never told anyone that part until now. Rule 6 is the one that still wakes me up at 3 in the morning with my hand already over my own mouth. If you hear your name called from the direction of the bay after midnight, do not answer, do not look, and count backward from 100 until it stops. On my 31st night at the Trahan House, working late in the museum's sound lab, restoring a reel of dock worker interviews recorded in 1936, I heard my own name come through the headphones, spoken soft between 2 sentences of a dead man's voice, in a room that had been empty since before grandmother was born. Wilfred Deming found me still sitting there an hour later, my hands shaking too hard to eject the tape. He was Odile's cousin by marriage, a retired harbor pilot who came by most Tuesdays to catalog charts nobody else could read anymore. He didn't ask what was wrong. He looked at the reel turning slow on the deck and asked how many nights I'd been at the house, and when I told him 31, his face did something I didn't like at all. He told me about the hurricane that came up fast in September of 1947 and caught 6 shrimp boat crews still tied to the Trahan dock, men who'd paid for rooms that Odile's father-in-law locked from the outside once the water started rising, to keep the boarding house dry, to keep the register full for the season. 6 men who never made it past the porch. He told me the marsh out back had never fully given back what it took that week, not in any way you could measure with a gauge. He told me the rules weren't a landlady's superstition. They were a debt, paid out 1 tenant at a time, and every tenant who lasted a full season without breaking Rule 6 added 1 more quiet year to the house. I asked him what happened to the ones who did break it. He didn't answer that either. I still live at the Trahan house. I haven't found a way to leave that doesn't feel like it would cost more than staying does. Odile winds the clock every morning at 7. Wolf comes by on Tuesdays and never quite finishes his sentences about 1947. Some nights the radio hums after 10, and I keep my mouth shut and wait it out. Some nights I don't realize I've been holding my breath until it stops on its own. I have never found a Rule 7 written anywhere in this house, but I know there's a 7th line waiting on that older paper behind the grill. The tape stops exactly where it would begin.